The Kinky Cocktail Hour is brought to you by Motorbunny, the world's most powerful saddle-style vibrator that offers fabulous, creative sexual experiences. We use it and it rotates, it vibrates, and it delivers mind-blowing orgasms. Enjoy Motorbunny as your favorite sex toy. When you order the Motorbunny, multiple attachments are included along with the Link controller, which allows wireless control from anywhere. Motorbunny is the world's most powerful saddle-style vibrator on Earth. Use the link in the show notes and spice up your sex life with a Motorbunny. You're listening to Kinky Cocktail Hour, a conversation between adults about sex-forward relationships, kinky lifestyles, and frank communication. If you're under 18, please stop listening and visit scarletteen.com. I'm Lady Petra. My pronouns are she, her, and hers.
I'm SafferMaster. My pronouns are him, his, and he.
And this is Kinky Cocktail Hour.
Cheers!
Cheers!
So what are we drinking today?
So we're having a Razzaide, and it's equal parts limoncello vodka, about 10 raspberries. You muddle those together. Then you put in lemonade. We have homemade lemonade. Shake it, and then pour it over ice and garnish with 2 raspberries.
Sounds yummy.
Yeah, I think it sounds good.
It's pretty too.
Yeah.
It's really a lovely color.
Dangerous.
Wow, what a lot of flavors.
It's dangerous.
It's so fruity.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got the real lemonade in there. Mm-hmm. We've got limoncello.
Which amplifies the lemons.
And it's got vodka, of course.
Of course.
And then your raspberries muddled in your lemonade.
Yeah.
And fresh. That's the key versus letting it sit. If you can do fresh, you always want to do fresh.
Yeah. No, that's yummy.
That's dangerous, too.
It's yes, it is.
It's very dangerous.
It's dangerous, too. Mm-hmm. So what are we talking about today?
So, in reflection of our last interview with Slave, it brought up things for me about when I first was searching, because she shared her search, and it was uncanny how we had similarities. And with COVID being what it is, a lot of people aren't able to connect because of social distancing and safety. And so now's the time probably to be focusing on, if you are looking for an ideal partner or a play partner, it doesn't have to be attached to a relationship. It could just be a play partner, or you're looking for a dynamic, or you are looking for a relationship. There are some things to do while you are online, although we don't usually consider that communication with the times that we're in. That's going to be our communication right now, to at least get some data before you plan a meeting at some point with a potential.
Sure.
And so there's some questions that kind of general questions asked. These are, of course, are not the exhaustive list of questions, but these are some things to consider as you approach looking for somebody. So first, before you start to play or even talk about play, you need to ask yourself, what am I really hungry for right now with this ideal person that I'm looking for? You're trying to find a situation where you play with real passion versus playing for expectation.
Yeah. Yeah, because, we've talked about this. The thing that has made the people we've talked with on this podcast the happiest is when they're living their true, authentic self. That's what makes them happy.
Completely.
Yeah. So I really get the root of this question is for you to sort of look inwardly and see, what is it you really, truly want to have in a relationship.
Right. And there's going to be something that pops up for you. I know that on your journey, you had shared in the podcast several times, but you started playing, you identified as a sadist, and then at some point, you're playing with whoever, whenever you want. You had no endless of subs available to play in all different types of levels of intensity.
Correct.
But you were missing something.
Yes.
And what you became present to was you've shared intimacy was missing.
That's right.
Real intimacy, alignment, of course, you were had friendships with these people, some of them more than others, right?
Right.
However, there wasn't that intimacy.
Yeah, I think that's really the case, right? So there was the kink, which was great, and I got really present to who I was as a kinkster.
You're right.
But I still felt like there wasn't relationship, the source of relationship, because what I was looking for was a relationship with somebody with whom I could play.
Right.
Right. And so I got present to that, as I dived down into what was missing.
Right.
That's where I set my search.
And I think it's fascinating because I too had my own checklist or criteria that I was looking for, someone who what do I want? And I really wanted a dominant person. I didn't have that in my marriage, and it was a faux type of dominance. It was domineering.
Right.
But I wanted a true dominant partner. And what's interesting too is what you think when you're isolated before you've met the person. Because again, we're creating each other.
Right.
And then when we're together, those hard lines of where we thought, which are closer to expectation, they've blurred because you're with another organic being and we're experiencing everything together. So everything changes.
Right.
So you can't be married to the expectations. You got to know what you're going after and what you want to create, but don't be married to the expectations because that just lets for letdown.
No, we talk a lot about being committed and not attached.
Correct.
And so if you're committed to finding somebody with whom you're 100% aligned in every possible way, and you're not attached to what that looks like, you'll get to where I got, which is I'm open to being, loved and having intimacy.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah, I'd say be really authentically yourself.
Yes. So another question to ask is what kinds of scenes turn you on? And I know we've had quite a bit of listeners pipe in that are newbies to FetLife, that are new to the scene completely new to kink. Although I do think everyone's kinky on some level. But in their mind, they think they're new to the FetLife community. And then there's people that are highly seasoned and have been around for lots of years and then some of those individuals have stayed consistent with their orientation, and some have shifted because we're organic beings. But the reason this question is so great is because it's asking the person you're talking to reach into both their spank bank of prior hot experiences and fantasies for future hotness. So this question ends up prompting your potential new playmate to think beyond fetishes and acts. Because that's part of the issue. We often give the laundry list of fetishes, or our limits, hard limits. Right. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. And, when you hear, luckily adults can hear conjunctions, but depending on how young you are, if you're in your early 20s, you got to be careful because don'ts and can'ts and won'ts aren't interpreted by an unformed brain yet. Yeah. What they hear is can, do, and that's how problems happen. People wonder, well, I told you don't do that. Okay, but the person heard do, depending on the maturity of their brain, and we all know, the average brain cooks it till 25. So there's lots of people having sex out there before they're 25.
Right. So what's your point?
So you're asking these questions so that you can get closer to the flavor of the scene you like.
So what's the question?
My question is, what kinds of scenes turn you on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say think in pictures, right?
Yes.
Not about acts.
Yes.
Think about what turns you on. Think about what kind of sex arouses you. Mm-hmm. Think about the pornography you watch.
Perfect.
Right?
That's perfect.
And then think about scenes that you would like to have occur both to you and also that you get to do to others.
Yeah. So do your scenes, without getting into acts, do your scenes elicit particular emotions that you love? Yeah. Like, are you into fear or abandonment or nurturing or erotic humiliation? Those are just some examples. Sure. Because that gives someone context and flavor for the type of scene you're into. Because you could say, well, I like bondage, But really, the person likes bondage with humiliation. That's really what but all they said was bondage. So you think bondage is going to fill the bill. And then you find out later they keep angsting on, tell me I'm a whore, or slap me in the face, or pee on me or something. And you're like, where'd that come from?
Right. Need to ask. Yeah.
And then sometimes you'll hear things you're like, ugh, I don't know if I could do that. Or that's what his past partners have done. I can't live up to that thing. But what you can do a lot with that information is if you're relatively aligned and there's only a few areas where you either haven't tried it or will not ever try it because it's a hard limit or what have you, that's not a deal breaker per se in a dynamic if you're both mature.
Right.
The idea is sometimes you can park those ideas in your spank bank as creative ways to think about how you might be able to bring pieces of that into a scene or into the dynamic, or to experiment, or to, if you're polyamorous, to provide other opportunities for someone, those kind of things. Yeah. So that's number 2. So the third question is, what characteristics do you find sexy in a dominant or submissive?
It's a great question.
Yeah, because you got to be attracted.
Right.
I mean, really. Now, some people get used, and there is a difference. Some people are like, let's say a masochist, trust their master but is not sexually attracted to them in any level. They don't have sex. They actually practice S&M purely. And that's fine too. There's no judgment on this. But if you're looking for a relationship, you want to be attracted to the person at some level. And
but not just to the act. You want to be attracted to the person.
To the person, that's what I mean. The characteristics of them, yeah. So there's an exercise you can do that either as a submissive or a dominant that kind of allows you to get clear on this. And so what you'd ask yourself is, what characteristics best describe your dominant or submissive side? What are those?
Yeah, so
if you had to say, what are your characteristics as a dominant?
I'm firm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm generous.
Yes.
I'm tolerant.
Sensual.
I am sensual. I am. I know.
And there's many others, but that's a great example. And so then list your characteristics that you find attractive, since you're a dominant, in a submissive that you're looking for. What do you want your submissive's characteristics to be?
Obedient.
Yep.
That's it.
I'm out, tapping out.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's everything you need.
But see, that's fine. There's no right or wrong answer here.
Right.
And then finally, what characteristics are buzzkills for you?
Right.
Because, I mean, it could be, and it's not always a sexual thing. It could be just a mannerism. Right. It could be a just everyday behavior, something that is a buzzkill for you.
Right.
That would be like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So these are questions to ask.
Yeah, to ask yourself. Within that question itself, to consider. And so then the next question you have is, what experiences do you have in a power exchange?
Okay.
Some people have no experience in that. Right. Some people have experience in that.
Yeah, and you could be on either side of that.
Exactly.
You could have an experience as a dominant in a power exchange, and you can have an experience as a submissive in a power exchange.
Yep. Yeah.
And you can, if you're a switch, you can do both of those things yourself versus just be on one side or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and this allows you to further press questions like have you had other power exchange partners, or have they just had play partners, right?
Right.
Do you know what your limits are? I mean, have you really taken an inventory of your own limits to know what your limits are? Because you're asking the other person to share theirs with you too, right? Yeah. Do you know how your body and mind responds to X, Y, and Z?
Right.
It's a great opportunity to learn about someone else's history and share your own to see if there's alignment there on experiences. So it's a great question, I think. And truly, I wish I had these questions when I was searching, but by hit or miss, I figured it out. But
I'm going to say I'm glad you had no questions and you found me.
Yes, exactly.
So, it occurs to me that what you really are trying to get at is your real true desire, like what you really truly desire, want in a partner and for yourself in the world of sexuality and relationship. So that's really what you're trying to craft the picture of your future
I think this is what's amazing about kink is you have access in the kink community and kink in general. And it's a very generalized statement, but more than the vanilla that I ever experienced is to be frank with someone about sex.
Yeah.
Before you have sex.
Yes.
To spend time meeting the person and getting to know them before you have sex.
Yeah.
And then deciding we're a good fit, we align, and now we're going to have sex.
Yeah.
That does not happen the vanilla way. You don't sit there and talk about, well, how do you like to have your blowjobs? And do you enter the pussy first, or are you ass man?
Right.
I mean, I think people tease around those ideas as kind of foreplay, but then they're going to jump in the sack that night probably if they're talking that explicit to each other. Yeah. The reality is there's not a lot of communication.
No, and we talk about kink being really, like our kink being communication, like really being in communication. Because it gives you access to such a much better experience.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
You know, if every box is checked and you can put aside all of your concerns, then you can have sex like mind-blowing sex.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another question to ask, and I thought this was interesting. At first I was like, this is a weird question. And then I really like it because it gets to the crux of if someone's been their orientation for a while and that they really understand authentically who they are. And the question is, what gets you off about being a submissive or a dominant?
Right.
What is it?
It's a good question.
What is it that does it for you about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. I'm not sure people necessarily know the answer to that.
No.
And the reason I say that is because, you know, there's some suspicion that side, either side of that equation, is hardwired into you.
I think it's true, but the little idiosyncrasies of it are things like, is it because you like being bullied, or you like to bully? Do you like feeling smaller, or do you like feeling bigger? Or likewise, do you like relinquishing your power, or do you like to be powerful? There's things that you like about that orientation.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'd characterize dominance with those terms, but I get the gist of the question.
You know, like, is it about controlling someone's orgasm? Is it about denial? Is it about servicing or being served?
Right.
You know, are there and for some people it might be a little obscure on what that actually is, because there's lots of things in their dynamic. But there are some dynamics I know, very high protocol ones, that are like the dominance I've heard say, I just like the service. I like the slave to be at my service whenever I need.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's a dynamic. They've chosen that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another question is, what are things that you haven't tried but would like to?
Yes, that's a great question.
It's a super question, because people often don't forecast the future or gesture to the future when it comes to sex, especially if they're just meeting.
Right.
It's like, just let's fuck and find out if it worked, if our parts fit, and we play well together. Okay, now we can start planning of, let's go, you know, we're voyeurs or we're exhibitionists, so we want to go have sex on the beach in front of people. Whatever. But people don't often gesture to that early. They don't say, I have a real wish to be suspended and fucked.
You know, we talked to kinky introverts.
Yes.
About it. And, and they were cutting on the first date.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And they found that out. They talked.
They talked.
Yeah, they actually talked.
They got to cut on the first date because they were in communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, because sometimes connections inspire you in new ways, and it could change the flavor of the submission or dominance that you have. And if you listen to the passion in someone else's desires, like things like what do they masturbate to, what kind of porn they watch, like we talked about, then you have ways of understanding how to explore with them in scening. And I thought that was powerful, because there's a lot given to a dominant to say, okay, you're the showman. Right. Figure it out. Right. And you're, you know, I'm your submissive. I got to be happy, or, you know, I'm making very jest about it, but in short, that's what it is. But by sharing, it allows people to be creative, and you can input creativity. We did that today. Yeah. And allow for even better opportunities for better connection, better sex, better dynamics, better play.
Yeah. No, again, we're harping on this, but it really is communication. It really is
totally
to, be clear about who you are, be clear about what you want, and then talk about it.
So these next few questions, I was like, oh my God, I would have never thought about this, but these are perfect questions because this is often, people make stories up about this. So the first question is, what do you look like and sound like when things are going good for you in a scene or play?
A great question.
It's a super question.
Yeah.
So you can say, I'm highly verbal, I'm moaning, I'm,
right.
I'm obviously, I get wet, but there's some women that don't get wet that has nothing to do with them being turned on. There are actual biological things going on there. So the reality is being able to say those things so the person can read you, especially if you're new partners.
Yeah.
And the other question is, what do you look like and sound like when things are not going well?
Great question again.
Yeah. Like, so flogging, for example.
Right.
This isn't about having ego about it. I haven't used my safe words.
No.
Right? But that's not an ego thing. I don't at all put out there to the world that, oh, you should try to compete and not use your safe words. That's not it. I haven't gotten to a point where that is it.
Right.
That's not a problem. There's nothing wrong. But there have been issues with me having kind of this cyclical ability as a masochist to either accept more pain or not.
Right.
You read me pretty well. And so the reality is sometimes it's more intense for me. But it's not a hard limit like I'm going to red out. And so you'll see me when things aren't going as well. I'll probably start scooting my butt around or whining more or pulling my ass in or, trying to, a little bit of fight or flight kind of thing, but I'm really not moving away. I'm just trying to get my head around managing what I'm experiencing. You know that because you play with me, but that would be something to tell somebody. Hey, this is when you need to slow down the intensity or this is what needs to happen. Okay. Yeah. So then the other really important question, of course, and we've addressed this before, is aftercare. And what does each person need for aftercare? And it obviously can change based on how intense the scenes are or what's happening in the scene. But you kind of know what you need, and you need to be able to ask for that and say that. You can't expect people to read your mind. And this is for both the top and the bottom.
Yeah, and the thing is that not only can you not expect them to read your mind, but when they ask you when you're in a state of needing aftercare, and you can't say,
and you can't talk,
if you haven't talked about it, they wouldn't know where to go,
and they wouldn't recognize. I would add a question in there like, this is what tends to happen from my experience from working with other people. When I hit subspace, I tend to do this. So these type of communications are important for me. And that could be you're guiding me physically by pushing with your hand to direct me places versus words aren't very good. I'm not going to be a good communicator, or maybe I'm a great communicator, but maybe I won't remember. Post subspace, maybe I won't remember us talking. I think those are important things to discern. So we play safely. Yeah. And then the key with aftercare too is, who do you want aftercare from? You may not want it from your dominant. You may want a self-care. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way, but he or she may have other submissives that you have an agreement that the other submissive or other service sub or what have you cares for you. Or maybe the dominant thinks that's what should happen. But you need to talk about that. And then what does it actually look like? What does it entail? And are there phases? Because sometimes people have phases. Depending on if we go into a higher scene, a lot of times you cover me up and I take a short nap. Sometimes there's been a few occasions where I don't need a nap. I'm like energized, so I don't need a nap. But then generally we do it in phases. Like you have me get up and we get dressed and we usually go on a walk. Or we go get something to eat. And we, because it could take a couple hours to come down. And then finally, I found this interesting site, and I'll put it on the podcast write-up, about questions to ask your partner, because communication is the key, is getting what you want out of a dynamic or relationship. And the website's called We Should Try It. And there's definitely a whole bunch of basics, which are for vanillas, BDSM, all the way up to kink. But then they have sections where they have this one section called Advanced. And these are questions that go along more with BDSM. And you can ask these back and forth with one another. Since we're in COVID, you got time to ask the direct question and then get an answer. And then maybe that leads to a further discussion about it.
Yeah.
But there's things like have a weapon directed at me during sex, a knife or a gun. That might be something to talk about.
It's definitely something to talk about.
Or it's something to say, that's a hard limit for me.
Absolutely.
But what a great way to kind of do an inventory. Slap my partner's face during sex.
Yeah.
Do you like that? Do you not?
Right.
There are people that like that.
Absolutely.
You know?
Both doing it and getting it.
Have my hair pulled.
Right.
Is that something I want? Struck with a cane.
Right.
You know, doing it and it's both sides. This is for both sides of the equation. Yeah. Role play a rape partner.
Ooh.
I mean, that's what's interesting is this list really goes through quite a lot of things, like have your partner wear a ball gag. So then there's a bonus section, which is like advanced topics to talk about. But these actually go into more things like specifics, like do you like lubricants at all during sex? Some people do not, not especially, I don't mean that, but I've heard and read some things about sadists wanting, like actually wiping the sub out dry so that they're dry fucking it. And that's a certain amount of pain and certain amount of uncomfort. And that's part of the sadistic part of it. You know, I don't know how it feels for him, but that's what, they're enduring too. Eating food off your partner's body. If you're not into food with sex, that could be a huge turnoff for you.
What's that called? Sploshing?
Sploshing, yeah. That could be something where you also, because that could be sushi off someone's body, or it could be like a shake being poured over someone and then doing it. Coming on your partner's face.
Right.
Maybe they don't like bukkake. Maybe that's not their thing. But what's fascinating is we don't ever get an opportunity in vanilla to sit there while we're at the bar with beer, meeting someone for the first time. Usually the pressure is, if they're doable enough, I'm going to go home and fuck them tonight. And you're not going to sit there and talk about all the sex acts. No.
That's one of the things I really think kink has done, is it's really allowed you to put this topic on the table. Because
without
it requires,
sex pressing you.
Yeah, because it requires communication to have successful kink dynamic.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think
you're really clear when you go into it. If I had all these kind of questions answered and I kind of knew this person likes these things, so I've got to be prepared. This could happen, but this person knows where I stand on it.
Yeah.
So we have agreements, right? Yeah. We know how to make up our agreements about it.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going into a play scene after I've had all this information, and think about the way it builds trust and the ability to be confident going into a play scene. Until someone breaks their word, the reality is you're at your word up to that point. And so you go into it feeling like, I feel well informed about what could happen today.
Yeah.
When I meet you in the bar and it's vanilla, it's like you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. No. You really don't.
No, you might end up, having harder sex than you anticipated.
Right.
Yeah.
But people aren't talking about it. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
No, I think that's great. I really do think that we're in a opportunity with COVID. We have an opportunity to really dive deep in this.
Yeah, I mean, you might be able to, quite frankly, I thought about this today, is inventory possible playmates, and especially if you're polyamorous, a group of possible playmates, potentials, so that when COVID gets lifted, you have an actual real group of people to explore and continue meeting and continue that path with, that you wouldn't have the opportunity because people feel like they're under the gun. But COVID stopped everything right now, kind of like halted it all. So what do you do with your time? Well, you do the work.
Do the work, right, exactly.
That's what we're proposing. Do the work.
Do the work.
Find the great partner you deserve.
I'm telling you, it's worth it.
Or partners, because there's multiple people out there.
It's if you find the partners you want and deserve, it's worth it.
It's so worth it.
Do the work.
So worth it. Yes, do the work. I'm feeling complete.
I am complete.
That's it for today. If you're interested in kinky relationship coaching, online domination, or if you'd like to sponsor the pod to keep it going, please visit our Patreon website at Lady Petra Playground. You can reach me via email at ladypetraplayground@gmail.com. Our music is composed and performed by Roger Ferguson, who can be found at rogerfergusonmusic.com. Till next time, Cheers.